Hello, everyone. This is my immigrant diary. Do you know that each year, around 700,000 to 900,000 people become naturalized US citizens after living legally in the US for at least 3 to 5 years?
I honestly didn't know that until you just said it to me like moments ago, actually, before we started. So that's a pretty interesting statistic. I would assume that it's maybe around 100,000. That would be my assumption, but basically almost a million people. Wow, that is
Yeah.
amazing. That is
Yeah, if you round it up, right? Like, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. That's much more than a lot of countries.
Oh, yeah, there are small countries that have less than 1 million. Wow.
Yeah.
Now you put it in that kind of light, it just kind of changes the way I see it now. That's a lot of number.
Yeah. But I do want to bring to your attention like a topic that's been going on in the news for a while now. I'm sure you've heard of Palestinian protester or the Columbia University student that was protesting on behalf of Palestine, and now the Trump administration has arrested him and they are planning. Actually, they're already in the process of deporting him. But of course, there are a lot of issues with that. But I think for those of us that are moving to the United States, there are a lot of things that we might not be aware of, especially regarding this topic. I'm going to play a video about what the Secretary of State said about the situation.
If you actually end up doing that, once you're in this country on such a visa, we will revoke it.
Marco Rubio was asked a question yesterday about this guy, Mohammed or Mahmoud Khalil, who is a Syrian national on a green card, who has been one of the leaders of these pro-Hamas protests. The pro-Hamas protests, which took over campuses, which did not let students and some faculty on campus, which were violent, and they occupied buildings and broke windows. And you've seen all of this stuff. So finally, we are doing something about it. This has nothing to do with free speech. If this Hamas supporter just wanted to talk about how he was a Hamas supporter privately, that would be fine. But when you start occupying buildings and working with groups that are coordinating, likely with Hamas, I mean, they're going to find that out too, but that are coordinating with all of these nonprofits that are calling for violence and everything else, you're in trouble, dude. And no one has a right to an American green card. So this clip is about a minute and a half. This might be the moment of Marco Rubio's career. It is absolutely perfect.
President Trump appealed to a lot of Americans during his campaign on free speech arguments and not pressing speech, especially from the government. But your revocation of the green card, to many, is seen as one of the most anti-speech actions a secretary could take with his powers. How do you respond?
Yeah. When you enter this is an important point, and I'm glad you asked this question. When you come to the United States as a visitor, which is what a visa is, which is how this individual entered this country as on a visitor's visa, okay? You are here as a visitor. We can deny you that visa. We can deny you that if you tell us when you apply, hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a student visa. I am a big supporter of Hamas, a murderous, barbaric group that kidnaps children, that rapes teenage girls, that takes hostages, that allows them to die in captivity, that returns more bodies than live hostages. If you tell us that you are in favor of a group like this, and if you tell us when you apply for your visa, and by the way, I intend to come to your country as a student and rile up all kinds of anti-Jewish student, anti-Semitic activities, I intend to shut down your universities. If you told us all these things when you applied for a visa, we would deny your visa. I hope to. If you actually end up doing that, once you're in this country on such a visa, we will revoke it. And if you end up having a green card, not citizenship, but a green card as a result of that visa while you're here in those activities, we're going to kick you out. It's as simple as that. This is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with. No one has a right to a student visa. No one has a right to a green card, by the way. So when you apply for a student visa or any visa to enter the United States, we have a right to deny you for virtually any reason. But I think being a supporter of Hamas and coming into our universities and turning them upside down and being complicit in what are clearly crimes of vandalization, complicit in shutting down learning institutions. There are kids at these schools that can't go to class. You pay all this money to these high-priced schools that are supposed to be of great esteem, and you can't even go to class. You're afraid to go to class because these lunatics are running around with covers on their face, screaming terrifying things. If you told us that's what you intended to do when you came to America, we would have never let you in. And if you do it once you get in, we're going to revoke it.
Yeah, so that's the whole video. That's a lot, and that's very, very intense. And for me, it's one of the things that I've always generally tried to be careful about is that wherever you go as an immigrant, especially, you want to be careful about things that might turn violent.
Yeah.
Things that turn violent in any kind of situation, you are almost always going to feel the brunt of the law compared to like someone who's a citizen, and that's another angle to this. I think that a lot of, maybe not a lot, but especially Mahmoud in this case, he doesn't understand that he's not a US citizen, so he doesn't have a right to remain in the US. So that's one of the important things that he actually missed for whatever reason. And the other part of this also is that there were a lot of American citizens that he was actually with. So for whatever reason, I think he thought that it was going to be fine, like going to this kind of protests. The protest itself is not the issue. The issue is the violence part, which
the protest turned violence. I saw the news. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why it's easier for the current administration to say, okay, fine, you are a terrorist sympathizer, or, that's kind of the way, the equivalent like phrase for what they're accusing him of, and that's why they want to deport him. But if you remember also at the beginning of the video, the reporter talked about the issue being a free speech issue, and, the Trump administration trying to sort of clamp down on free speech. But from the Secretary of State, that's Senator Marco Rubio's response, that was not the issue. The issue was that like this guy or this person is protesting in favor of an organization whom the United States government has deemed a terrorist organization. So that's the major problem right here. So another fact of this whole issue is also that he's already married. And I think they're expecting a child. So I think
she's 9 months pregnant. 8 months pregnant.
That's definitely going to complicate things a little bit. So
I agree with you, Wally, because when I first heard this story, before you brought it up, I read something that showed that he's married, that says that he's married to a US citizen and she's pregnant. And so there's a lot of other groups, not just talking about free speech now, they're talking about family, they're talking about separating the family. So there's so many issues, underlying issues there, because now the Trump administration are trying to argue that he's a sympathizer, but that's not enough, right, to deport him. They're also trying to find any connection with him and Hamas, but there's none existing. So far, they've not been able to provide any. And so there are so many gray areas in this case. But one of the things that this case just proves is that you're not a US citizen, you can be kicked out of this country.
But even if they don't have proof, but they do have proof that he was involved in a violent aspect of the protest.
Yes.
That's something that they can at least stand on. Now, which is it enough to deport people?
So that's the question.
Or for the courts rather to answer.
Yeah, is it enough to deport him? But his case is also complicated because he's married to a US citizen. And a US citizen has a right to marry whoever they want to marry from anywhere, any part of the world. And if they get married, if the marriage is legit, irrespective of other issues, right? If the marriage is legit, the spouse is entitled to a green card and eventually to naturalize to become a US citizen. Now, like the fact we read earlier. So, like I said, there are many gray areas in the case that as it proceeds, a lot of clarity will come. There are a lot of arguments that will go on. The lawyers that's why they keep moving the case. They want to move it to Louisiana, but now they move the case. According to a CNN report, it says that the federal judge ordered the Palestine activist Mahmoud Khalil's case to be moved to New Jersey. So the case is still in court. The lawyers are trying to get him bail. The guy has not been granted bail, so he's still in custody. And so what that tells us is that Trump administration, they are still looking for a way to get him, to deport him, and also, the scapegoat.
I'm pretty sure they will try as much as possible to make an example out of him. And the goal is not necessarily to punish him. At least I believe the goal is for this to serve as a deterrent to anyone that might be thinking like that. But
I think the biggest issue with this case is because of the violence that broke out because of, what happened in the Columbia University when there was protests. There have been protests around, but each protest, these pro-Hamas groups, their protests have always turned violent in a way and kind of just been disruptive in America. And
Yeah.
so I think that is also why this is happening. You get, and you cannot have that. You cannot have this kind of destabilization in another man's country, so to speak. You're having a war in Hamas and in all the way in the Middle East, and you're trying to disrupt America that is far away from the war in physical terms. You get. So yeah.
Generally speaking, my recommendation for all immigrants is try to stay away from anything violent. Human beings are emotional, so I try to not let my emotions lead the way and just say, because I believe so much in this thing, I really want to be able to see it through. I just try to stay away from anything that has to do with violence as much as possible. So for me, if anything like that was happening, I'll be in like 2 states away. That's where
Well, it's like I said, there's so many gray area in the case, but honestly, I take your advice, and just push it. Just to reiterate what you said, if you're living in America, as an immigrant, try to avoid issues that will put you in a light where you will be in a deportation situation, or because you are supporting whether violence or otherwise, So
yeah, that's it from us for today. If you still watching this video, please like, share, subscribe. We really appreciate every little bit, and help our videos get out there and be able to serve as a sort of information for other people. So thank you so much for watching.
All right, have a good one there.